Hello everyone. As we welcome the new year, I wanted to share a glimpse of a journey that shaped who I am today. These videos are a window into a challenging chapter of my life, when I was diagnosed with cancer and underwent chemotherapy. It was a time filled with uncertainty, fear, and hope. Looking back, those moments remind me of how far I've come. Today, I am healthy, thriving, and deeply grateful for the second chance at life I've been given. That experience inspired me to dive deeper into health and wellness, leading me to aspire to become a certified health coach. My goal is to help others take charge of their health, no matter what challenges they face. This compilation isn't just about my battle with cancer, it's about resilience, faith, and the incredible power of support from loved ones. My hope is that these videos serve as a source of inspiration and encouragement for anyone facing their own struggles. As you watch these clips, remember, every small step forward is a victory. No matter where you are in your journey, there is always hope, and there is always a way to keep moving forward. Thank you for being part of this story. Here's to health, hope, and new beginnings in the year ahead.
Hey guys, it's Marco and I'm here at the hospital. I just finished my cycle 2 just a few minutes ago from my chemotherapy. So I'm right about headed home right now to recover for 2 weeks till cycle 3, which will start on the 8th of September. But anyway, before I go home, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts and experiences that I've had so far and compare cycle 1 with cycle 2. So in a word, cycle 2 was much better for me. Yeah, better would be the word for it in terms of how I reacted to it. I did cycle 2 at the hospital and with the chemotherapy drugs fed to me through a pump, which is this one. And for cycle 2, I did it as an outpatient at home, and I took a portable version of the pump with me, which is this like a device, a little device called an elastomeric pump. And if you run on any batteries or anything, you don't need to plug it into the wall, but it infuses the medicine, like the chemotherapy medicine, all the same. So I went in halfway through the second cycle to change my pump, which is kind of like a pit stop for me, like a pit stop. And now, I just finished my second cycle, and they ran the last medication for the day, which is called cyclophosphamide. It ran for about an hour and a half. So the question is how does cycle 1 compare to cycle 2? Before we get into that, could you just do me like a super quick favor and like this video and subscribe to my channel, and also ring that notification bell so that you know when my next video comes out, which is gonna be once a week or so. Anyway, moving on. In a nutshell, cycle 1 was much more intense. The first thing I felt in the first hour of my chemotherapy was just this wave of dizziness and nausea. And honestly, it hit me like a truck, and it overwhelmed me physically and emotionally. Tears just started streaming down my cheeks, and I thought to myself oh my God, is this really happening? Am I really a cancer patient receiving chemotherapy? And whose body am I in right now? I mean, I was fine a month ago, but now I'm here, getting chemotherapy. I felt overwhelmed, but my wife helped me get through the whole thing. She gave me a couple of ice packs and never left my side. I got an ice pack on the back of my neck and on my forehead. And then the nurse gave me some anti-nausea meds to get me through it. Now, the other thing that I had to deal with was the steroids that I took. They're called prednisone. And basically, it kept me up a lot at night. And I felt really restless and wired and amped up. And it took me a long time to settle down at night and go to bed. And even then, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and all of that. And the other thing that I experienced was just that, the steroids would kind of amplify my emotions, which wasn't always a good thing. One time I got really emotional after talking to my family in the US. Some of them live in the US, and we did a video chat. And after the call ended, I just started crying so hard that the pressure caused a little backflow, and I got some blood in my IV line. But I was okay, and the nurses fixed that for me, so I'm fine. But there is an upside to the whole steroid thing as well. I also got into this sort of like steroid fueled creative burst and started drawing stuff. So as a kid, I used to doodle a lot on my notebook, and whatever piece of paper I could get my hands on, and just draw and draw. So after many years today, I picked up a pencil and got back to drawing again. I got back into it, and I drew like a couple of mascots for like a coffee brand I was thinking about, and I came up with the logo and a name for it, and I even drew like a mock-up of what my mascots would and logo would look like if they were on like a coffee van. So I drew like a coffee van as well on my sketch pad, and because I see a lot of those vans going around here in Christchurch. So I was thinking of starting up like a coffee van sort of business from the ground up, or I could pitch my brand to someone who already owns a coffee van or something. I don't really know at this point, but anyway, that's what I put my energy into. And on the last day of my first cycle though, I also had to deal with the effects of coming off the steroids. So that morning that I stopped the steroids, the nausea hit me the hardest, and I kind of like dry heaved in the bathroom. But luckily, I didn't actually throw anything up. And again, I just took my anti-nausea meds to take the edge off. And also, the other thing that I had to get used to after coming home from my first cycle was this medication called filgrastim, and it's an injection that I had to take. And I took it on the last day of my first cycle here at the hospital. And then when I went home, a district nurse would come over to our house and give me an injection daily for like a week as part of like my recovery. And what filgrastim does is that it kickstarts the production of blood cells called neutrophils, which is super important for someone who's getting chemotherapy, because neutrophils basically fight infection during cancer treatment. And it's also known as GCSF, which is kind of like a stimulating factor. Basic side effects of GCSF was that they made me achy, and I felt like really icky in different parts of my body, like my hips, lower back, my throat got a little bit swollen. But my doctor and the nurses told me that this is normal because it was just the white blood cells working their way through my system, and it will be fighting infections in the different parts of my body. So that brings me to cycle 2. And first off, I think that I handled my nausea much better this time around. And the first dose of rituximab, which was like the first step of the chemo cycle, and it didn't hit me anywhere near as hard this time compared to last time. And throughout cycle 2, I'd feel slightly dizzy, but only like twice a day, in the morning and at night. So I just take my medication for that, and I was fine. And as for the steroids, I've handled them like a lot better now. My sleep hasn't been that erratic like the first time around. There were like days when I'd sleep like 3 a.m. but straight on until 10:30 a.m. So I'm getting more of these periods where I like slept uninterrupted, and that is like a big improvement, I think, in a way. And one other thing I noticed about steroids is that I kind of compare it to like riding a wave, like like you're surfing. Sometimes I'd ride the wave, pretty easy, pretty smoothly, and sometimes I just like wipe out and crash like I did during cycle 1. But still, I took advantage of my steroid-fueled creative burst, and which was to plan and create this channel actually. So I brainstormed with my wife, and we came up with different topics to like talk about, and also like even the name of this channel as well. So that's where I put my energy into. And also, just a brief background about me. Currently, I do tech support for a software company, but for the longest time, I've been a copywriter and content writer. So this is definitely something that I do, but this is my first time actually being in front of the camera and being on like the other side of the content creation process. So you might have noticed that by now that I'm still like getting the hang of this thing. But anyway, just to wrap things up, I'm not sure what post-chemo, for cycle 2 will be like for me. I'm gonna find out soon like how my GCSF injections will affect me this time. But I'll just wait and see what happens, and hope for the best. So that's pretty much like all I've got for now. And if you have any thoughts or stories to share about, like your experiences, please let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear from from all of you guys. This is like my experience, but I also want you guys to share yours as well. And one last thing, guys, if you could just please take a quick second to like and subscribe, and also ring that notification bell, as it would really mean a lot to me if you did that. And I'll send you a quick update soon. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.
Hey guys, this is Marco, and I'm just giving you a quick update about what's happening with me today. So basically, I'm just going to have an MRI, which stands for magnetic resonance imaging, and it's just like a special kind of scan that happens when they need to look inside you and see what's going on inside your body for some reason. But the main reason why I'm getting an MRI today is just for my head, actually. They just want to make sure that everything is okay with my brain and my nervous system in general. And that means that the doctor just wants to make sure that the lymphoma I'm getting treated for isn't going to affect my brain in any way. Although the chances for that are extremely low anyway, but in any case, it is good just to make sure that there's nothing going on in that area and to make sure that I'm safe. So I'm going to be putting a link in the description below this video if you want to know more about how MRI works and also how lymphoma might play a role in the brain and in the nervous system. But anyway, the whole scan should take maybe about 20 minutes or so. So I should be done pretty soon, less than half an hour. And it's pretty straightforward, so I'm looking forward to some good results. All right, so I'll talk to you in the next video. Hey everyone, this is Marco, and I'm back with another update. It's about cycle number 3, which I've just wrapped up. I'm going to be talking about some of the effects that I've noticed this time around, and that includes physical and mental and emotional. Also, something really important I learned about going through chemotherapy, and if you've gone through the same thing that I have, more or less, then you'll know what I'm talking about. And I'll also talk a little bit about my mental health and some of the things that I've done to help me cope so far. Plus, I'll also get into some of the things I've got coming up and what I'm looking forward to. Anyway, before we continue, I wanted to ask you to like this video and subscribe to my channel, so I'd really appreciate that. So in a nutshell, I'd say there are a lot of ups and downs during this cycle number 3, but I'd also like to think that there were more ups than downs, so I'm happy with that. And one of the things I've noticed is that my energy levels would suddenly dip during the day. For instance, there was a day when I nodded off. It was sort of like a mini crash. And the other thing that I've noticed was that I got a little bit overconfident coming out of this cycle, because I thought I'd gotten used to the treatment by now, because it didn't really feel like a post-cycle crash like before. But as it turned out, the effects this time were just delayed, so they didn't hit me that soon, not like my other previous cycles. So this time around, it's sort of like the effects were delayed. So I did have a slump coming out of cycle number 3. I did experience a bit of a crash like before, which meant like I was feeling nauseous and having smaller meals because of the nausea, and food would often taste weird for me, and it didn't really take much to trigger my nausea. And to help with that, I just often have a light dinner, and I'd have like a cold fruit berry smoothie, or maybe just ice cold water, which helps with the nausea. And the biggest thing I've learned so far is that the effects of chemotherapy are cumulative. So what does that mean really? Well, it just means that the effects of the treatment add up, so you don't really notice them at first, and they only start to manifest after you've been doing it for some time. Which makes sense, because I'm now halfway through my whole treatment, which is called R-EPOCH, by the way. And if you want to know more about this type of lymphoma-specific chemotherapy, I'll add the link in the description below, so you can look out for that. But basically, R-EPOCH is a very high dose kind of treatment for the type of lymphoma that I have. which is a high-grade B-cell double-hit lymphoma. Basically, like R-EPOCH is a potent cocktail of drugs they give me over 5 days, which is made up of rituximab, etoposide, phosphate, prednisone, vincristine sulfate, cyclophosphamide, and doxorubicin hydrochloride. So I know that sounds like a mouthful, but the good news is that, what I have is treatable. So I am really grateful that I'm getting the healthcare that I need for, my condition. But going back to what I was saying, the effects of chemotherapy are cumulative, so they add up. And that means that it does take a toll on me, and it makes me feel, pretty lousy at times, to be honest with you. I'd have like really bad days where I'm just like knocked down on my feet. And it's something that I only realized, when I actually was talking to the nurses about what I was feeling, and they did let me know that the effects are cumulative. So that did help me get through the process, just knowing that it's really par for the course. And the nurses also told me that during this time my body is flushing and processing a lot of things right now, the drugs and all that, so it kind of doesn't know what to do at this time. So it makes me, like, my body feel confused basically. So just knowing that really put things into perspective for me, because like I said in my other videos, that going through this whole thing makes me feel like I'm in someone else's body. It's really comforting to hear that it's just part of the process, and I just have to accept it, even if it does leave me feeling really drained and not motivated to do anything much. So I just have to be okay with that. And when I'm in that state, nothing really feels appealing, like not even just watching Netflix and doing nothing else, which normally I'd love to do. During this crash, I just end up scrolling through the thumbnail previews, and none of the movies that I was like looking at on the home screen on Netflix or Disney Plus, none of them seemed interesting, even though like normally I would probably watch something, but I just had to accept that it's normal to feel that way. But saying that, I'd still gently push myself to do something else anyway, even if it was just like, getting up, moving around, doing maybe the odd chore here and there, like nothing really too heavy maybe, so I could just be the tiny bit productive, because I think that it would be worse for me just to lie down and ruminate and get stuck in my head, and that wouldn't be good for me mentally wise. So speaking of which, when it comes to my mental health, I have to be totally honest with you, because with anyone going through this whole ordeal, I am still confronting my mortality often, which is pretty normal for anyone going through chemotherapy, and anyone who has lymphoma or any type of cancer. You'd naturally have thoughts about your mortality. And I've mentioned this before, because in the first week, like I said, when I finished cycle 1, it was really tough for me. I did that first cycle when I was at the hospital, and when I came home, I was really in a weird place emotionally. On the ride home, I was flooded with a lot of like what if thoughts, and a lot of other thoughts, like I wasn't the same person I was when I left the hospital. That was how I felt at the time, like I was in someone else's body. So I felt like coming back home after my chemo and getting hit with my diagnosis, that I wasn't the same person anymore. So that really left me feeling lost and confused and scared, because it seemed like I was kind of losing my identity, if that makes sense. And I didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't know what was going to happen to me. So that whole thing kind of opened the floodgates for me to a lot of what if thoughts. So it wasn't good for me, like mentally. But the good news is that I've gradually accepted these feelings, and I've worked my way through them. Honestly, it's an ongoing process, but as a whole, I am moving forward, even if there are like ups and downs, and I fluctuate emotionally from time to time. So I am moving forward, I think. And if you haven't watched my earlier video about how I coped with my diagnosis and how I learned acceptance, please check that out later. I do have a link to that as well. And yeah, so basically, mentally wise, I've managed my anxiety through mindfulness, meditation, and prayer. And those things personally helped me ride the wave of negative thoughts and to get it to a place of acceptance. and like always have gotten a lot of support from my wife and the rest of my family, along with people from the CDHB, which is the Canterbury District Health Board, and that's a CDHB. So that's one of the people there is Sharon, who is a psychologist who's been helping me get through my emotions and just processing, difficult feelings and thoughts. And also to another person, his name is Matt. He's from leukemia and blood cancer in New Zealand. So these people around me have kept me grounded and also helped me keep a good perspective on things. So I'm really grateful for that. And by the way, I'll also share a great resource on managing anxiety. It's a great series of PDF like worksheets. It's called Panic Stations that I got from Sharon. So I'll add that link in the description below. And that link is for a mental health center based in Australia. So their website has a looking after yourself section under the resources tab. So just check out that link later that I'll post in the description below. And yeah, coming out of this cycle, I think I did okay generally, even if I would get emotional at times. I mean, like coming off of the steroids does do that to me. If anything, I've noticed by now is that I really have to like not watch anything, like any movies maybe, for example, that are too intense or emotional, because that kind of like sets me off and puts me in a very like fragile and emotional like state, I think. For example, I was watching this animated Star Wars series called The Clone Wars, and the finale really like ended things on a beautiful, but it was an incredibly sad note. And I'm not gonna lie, some tears were shed because I'm kind of like invested in what happens to these characters, and in my post-chemo state, it really amplified things, my emotions maybe tenfold or 20-fold, whatever. But anyway, I did, have to get a handle on myself when it comes to those things. And yeah, I was a bit of a mess emotionally for a while, but that's one of the things I still have to like get used to. And one of the other things that I sort of like realized was that going through chemo is sort of like riding a bull, like a mechanical bull. That's kind of like a new analogy I came up with recently, because I was like talking with my cousin in the US like over chat, and I told him like I'm kind of getting used to the whole chemo thing right now, because this is my third cycle and it isn't my first rodeo. So that's where I kind of got the idea that aside from like riding the wave of emotions when it comes to managing the effects of chemo, getting used to the whole like treatment process, the regimen, is kind of like riding a mechanical bull. You might have seen those maybe in the past, like people would have contests like where to see like who would last the longest on the bull. So it's kind of like how it is for me right now, is that sometimes like riding the bull, so to speak, I'd get thrown off and I'd have to like pick myself up back again. But it gets easier the more that I do it, so that is a good thing. And yeah, so that's basically, how I am faring like in terms of the chemo. But the other thing I wanted to move on to right now is what I've got in store for me and what I'm looking forward to. So the first thing that comes to mind right now is seeing my coworkers again, because I've been on medical leave from my job for a few months now. So I do like miss the banner at the office, and I'm looking forward to also my next PET CT scan, which is due like a few weeks after like this third cycle, because I'm halfway through my whole treatment cycle right now. I've got 6 of these cycles in total, and now that I'm halfway, I'm a bit anxious to know like what the results are going to be, because honestly, it's just one of those things that you're anticipating. But all in all, I think that I'm responding to the treatment so far. So part of me is excited to see what the doctors do find from the upcoming PET CT scan. But anyway, that's all I had to share for now. So if you have any thoughts or comments that you'd like to share yourself, please post them down below in the comments. And I'd really love to hear from you guys, especially if you've had maybe a similar experience, or maybe someone who's gone through something like this. And also, if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel to get more videos from me, and ring that notification bell so you know right away when my latest video comes out. So yeah, thank you again for watching my video, and thank you for like just checking in with me to see how I'm doing. So I'll talk to you guys soon, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, this is Marco, and I'm just here at home relaxing after finishing cycle 4 just very recently. I wanted to give you guys a quick update about what's happening with me so far, some of the things that have been keeping me busy during this time, what I'm looking forward to in the not too distant future. But before we get started, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Just to begin with, I'm past the halfway mark of my entire treatment because I have a total of 6 cycles to complete, and I'm now just finished with cycle 4. And the biggest challenge I've had to deal with so far during cycle 2 is the dizziness that usually kicks in after the steroids at the end of each cycle. This time during this cycle there was a bit more dizziness that was drawn out in terms of coming off the steroids, but so that means that the withdrawal wasn't as intense because I tapered off the steroids more gradually rather than stopping abruptly. And the other thing that kind of complicated the situation was the fact that my hemoglobin levels were actually a bit low, and that means when that happens you're not getting enough oxygen in your blood, and that actually made me dizzy. Like whenever I would stand up or sit down or bend down and pick something up, and it got to the point where I actually had to do a blood transfusion. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. And what happened was that I went in for a standard checkup, and they found that after they did the blood test and they did an ECG, that would, the ECG is to check your heart's rhythm and electrical activity. They found that my heart rate was elevated, and like I said, my hemoglobin levels are quite low, so they had to keep me at the hospital, and I went through like a couple of packs of blood. And the other thing I had to deal with also was the fluid retention, and I got a bit of like swelling in my legs and feet during this cycle, and I had to put my feet up like if I was watching a movie maybe, or I was at the computer, and just had to make sure that my feet were like elevated a little bit. Or if I was in bed and I was reading a book or praying, I had to also put like a couple of pillows under my legs just to keep the swelling under control. Eventually though, the doctor gave me a medication just to flush out those excess fluids, and then I was fine after that. And the other thing I had to deal with was the brain fog. Now, I had also experienced this in my past cycles, so it is the same this time around. Now, they have a term for this which is called the chemo brain, and it is a real thing. I'm going to put a description in the link below if you want to know more about what the chemo brain is. And in a nutshell, chemo brain is when you experience some changes in thinking and memory while you're going through chemotherapy. And that means that for me, I might have, a hard time focusing on something, or I might forget things, and I can get confused a lot. So one example is if I'm reading a book and I have to go back to read certain sections again because it was hard for me to absorb, certain sections, and I couldn't really make sense of what I was reading. The other example is if I was like playing a game. I like to game a lot, and I was playing this game on the PS4 called Jedi Fallen Order, for anyone who cares about video games. But basically there's a lot of exploring in the game, and I would go round and round in circles in certain areas. Even if though there's a map, my sense of direction is off, and there was a time where I spent like a couple of hours just getting stuck. I got lost and I got stuck in the game. So that is frustrating because you want to do the things that you enjoy, but you can't because the brain fog and the chemo brain is getting in the way of that. But I just had to take a step back and not force myself to do things whenever I got stuck in that brain fog, and I'll just do something else instead to distract me, like maybe taking a drink of water or going for a nap. That's basically it. And the other thing I wanted to share was some very good news about my progress with my treatment as a whole. So they did a CT scan before I started this cycle 4, and my doctor said that she was very happy about my response to the treatment. And basically she said there are 3 basic categories of progress for chemotherapy patients. Number 1 is if you're not responding and it's actually getting worse, or number 2, if you're responding to the treatment and the tumors or the masses are getting smaller, and number 3, if it's like totally gone. and my doctor said I was I fall under number 2, which is of course a very good sign that I'm responding to the treatment. And I'm halfway through the whole thing, so that's something that I was happy to hear. It looks like I'm tracking well for my treatment, and the doctor also said that my kidney functions have gone back to normal. Because when this whole thing started, one of my kidneys wasn't working well, and the lymphoma had something to do with that. But now that I've responded to the treatment, my creatinine levels, which is a marker of kidney function, they look at that during my blood test. So those have gone back to normal, and I'm very happy about that as well. I'm also trying to, make productive use of my time here. So I'm pretty excited about that. At least to me, it's pretty exciting. So one of the things that I'm into right now is personal finance. And it's been my goal, when this whole thing started with me and my lymphoma, was for me to be more financially literate. Because when you go through this sort of thing, it is, inevitable that you think about the future and my kids' future specifically. So I took it upon myself to become more financially literate and just learn how to invest and how to, and to understand how finance works, and specifically in the context of the New Zealand economy. And I started reading this book called Rich Enough by this financial expert, Mary Holm. I'm just going to grab that for you here. That's what it looks like. I just have a little bookmark here. Read her book actually 2 years ago. I borrowed it from the library originally, and I finally got a copy for myself because I couldn't finish it in time before, and I had to keep re-borrowing it from the library. So I'm almost done reading that book, and I've got only about a chapter to go, one more chapter. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to go straight into her other book, which is called, just give me a sec, which is called The Richer You. And that's, reading this other book is going to give me more knowledge. It's going to round out my knowledge about personal finance even more, so that's a good thing. And the other thing is that I put my knowledge and my research into action by starting a managed fund for my 2 kids. So in a nutshell, a managed fund, or sometimes called a mutual fund, depending on where you live, I guess, in the world, is run by a team of investors, and it has a fund manager, and they invest in different assets like cash, bonds, shares, and properties. So that's both in New Zealand and overseas markets, and hopefully that's going to yield me a good return in the long run over the next few years. Aside from reading those 2 books I mentioned, I've also been listening to a couple of podcasts and a couple of YouTube channels, and one of which is called the NZ Everyday Investor by this guy called Darcy Ongaro. And the other thing I also did actually was to get into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular. And I just invested a very small amount, because one of the rules in investing is, especially when it comes to something as volatile as cryptocurrency, you don't invest in anything bigger than you're prepared to lose. So I'm just putting in very small amounts, or going to put small amounts every month and see how that goes. And that's just a bit of a pet project apart from my actual, serious investment that I've started with my managed fund for my kids. And I've also been following a couple of YouTube channels and podcasts related to cryptocurrency. It's helped me learn a lot about what Bitcoin is and how it works, and just the technology behind it, which is pretty fascinating. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, actually, learning all this new stuff. It's quite exciting for me. And for me, having these different investments is kind of like betting on different horses and see which one, performs the best. So kind of like a little experiment I have going on. And anyway, that's pretty much, what's been going on with me at the moment. And coming up for me is cycle number 5, which is happening a few days from now. And I'm going to have also at the same time a lumbar puncture before the actual cycle. And they're just going to put that in before they do the actual chemo. A lumbar puncture is when they put a needle in the lower part of your spine. And it's a test so they can examine my spinal fluid and also give me some chemotherapy, because some time back they did an MRI scan in from my brain. They didn't find anything, but they just want to make sure that they want to protect my nervous system and prevent the lymphoma from ever going in my brain. The chances are pretty low. They just want to do this lumbar puncture anyway to give me a sort of a chemotherapy, which will act as a prophylaxis or a preemptive treatment to keep the any lymphoma out of my brain, which is unlikely, but I just want to cover all the bases. And if you want to learn more about why a lumbar puncture is needed for people with lymphoma, I've included a link in the description below. But all in all, I'm not really worried about, that procedure because I've already gone through a biopsy in the past, and it's kind of like the same but different, which they poke a needle in my back. But at this point, I already know by now, just to let the professionals do their job. But overall, I'm just looking forward to get all of my cycles done and get my life back on track, hopefully before the end of the year. And I'm just looking forward to enjoying life again with my wife and kids and get back into a normal routine and all that. So if you have any questions or comments or thoughts you'd like to share, please post them in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so that you can get more updates about what's been going on with me. Hey everyone, this is Marco, and I've just finished cycle number 5, so that means I only have one more cycle to go after this one. I've mentioned this before, which is like the cumulative effects of chemotherapy. So previously I did talk about it from a physical and physiological aspect of the effects of chemotherapy, but today I just also wanted to touch on how it's impacting me mentally. I mean, I've talked about the physical aspect before, but it does have an effect on me psychologically. And I've noticed that the longer I've been doing this treatment, I've also noticed that it's kind of wearing me down psychologically as well, which is to be expected. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a matter of really managing what's been happening with me in that regard. So talk to my psychologist about this, who's been helping me through this process, and yeah, she did acknowledge, she did agree with me when I told her that it has been sort of taking a toll on me psychologically, which she said is normal, which is good to hear. That anyone who goes through this sort of thing, wear anyone down, anyone going through the situation in the same way or along the same lines as I have been going through. So I mean, I told her that this whole thing feels more and more like a marathon, because I'm 5 cycles into this process, so I only have one more to go, so I'm way past the halfway mark, and it does feel like running a marathon. There's this term, one of the other people I've been talking to, which is Matt from the Blood Cancer and Leukemia New Zealand, so he does do marathons as well, and so he did mention that because he's done marathons in the past, and he talked about this sort of phenomenon, which is hitting a wall. So when you hit a wall in a marathon, you sort of towards the end, usually when you're actually near the finish line, feel this sort of metaphorically you're hitting a wall wherein you feel like it can't go on because you're just so drained, mentally and physically. So kind of what I'm going through now. Sometimes there have been, I've had low points where I feel at this point that I just feel really worn down. It's more than maybe part to do with me crashing. I'm coming off the steroids, and that means that I'm sort of feeling the withdrawal symptoms. So that does, I guess, contribute to the psychological factor that I mentioned. In marathons, when you do hit a wall, you do eventually overcome that wall, and you push past it, and then you find that once you've gone past it, that you do sort of get a second wind, actually. So you sort of pick yourself back up, and then it's part of the process where you just have to make a conscious effort to keep going, and eventually your body will catch up. Once you sort of gain your footing again, then you can keep going. That I feel I'm hitting my own version of the wall, just acknowledging that to myself, that it's happening to me. That kind of gives me the leverage, mental leverage, to get back up again. I mean, I used to think about going through chemotherapy riding a bull, or riding a horse, you're in a rodeo, and you just have to get to the motion of things. Sometimes you'll get thrown off and you'll find yourself sprawling in the dirt. So that sort of thing, in the back of my mind when I started this whole process, and I just learned to pick myself back up again. Now my sort of thinking has shifted to looking at it as a marathon, and I'm just trying to pace myself at the moment and trying to just make it through the home stretch, basically. So that's sort of how I overcame my wall, and how I got my second wind. And the other things, I guess, physically, I guess emotionally or mentally, is I'm still dealing with a brain fog, and I think it's more stretched out even more than before. So the other thing is with my blood results, I'm like still going through like some issues with that, because I'm getting low hemoglobin levels, and that means that I've had to do actually another transfusion at the hospital. I had to stay at the hospital. I've had to like get a couple of packs of blood again, just transfused, and I did feel better after, but I just noticed that I needed like, another transfusion, because I was like really weak and I was really pale, and there was a lot of that dizziness again that happened before that really slowed down, I think, my post-chemo recovery. And the other thing was, so after that transfusion, I did probably like a day or two after, a couple of days after my transfusion, I did get a bit of a fever. I hit 38 a few days after, and then I had to call into the ward at the hospital to let them know what's going on with me, and so they told me to come over. They kept me overnight to give me some antibiotics and make sure that I was okay, because they saw with my blood results that my neutrophils, or my white blood cell count, was literally like 0. So that's really like dangerous actually, to have a fever. When your neutrophils are that low, you could get an infection, or you could even actually like sent to the ICU, which thankfully didn't happen. I didn't go to the ICU, which is a good thing. They just kept me overnight for observation and gave me some antibiotics, which I kept taking after I left. I took antibiotics for like a few days, but I was okay after that. So basically, when it came to like the treatment, I thought I'd recover as quickly as before, but that was not the case this time. The effects are cumulative, so this time around was a bit harder than the last, to be honest, but wanted to get through it and wanted to get better, and all things considered, I'm okay, even though it took me longer this time around. And I kind of looked at it as more than a marathon, also as an exercise in patience, and also like an exercise in trust, to trust the process, the treatment, that, this is the right treatment for me. And I've had to be patient, not forcing myself to get better right away, because this is a process and things change all the time. I'd say it's a fluid situation, so it does like change a lot from time to time, from moment to moment. So I just have to embrace that and have to be patient with the fact that it will take longer for each cycle. So I've learned just how to accept that. And lastly, I've also had to trust myself and believe in myself, and to keep the faith that, I have what it takes to get through this. And if I did it before in the last cycle, I can do it again now, and I can do it again after my last cycle, which is happening a couple of weeks from now. So moving on to the personal side of things, I was learning about, personal finance and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and all that stuff. One of the things I did notice this time around, because of the brain fog and the longer recovery, I've had a bit of a challenge with that. There's I've noticed like a bit of a mental resistance, I think, because of the brain fog and the mental fatigue that comes with the chemo. So I've had to slow down on, reading books or watching videos and listening to podcasts. So there's just really a lot of content to keep up with. Even if it was actually my job to do this full time, I still couldn't keep up, because there's just so much stuff out there. It's really, there's just like a lot of content out there that you can't possibly like consume that in a long stretch of time. So I've had to take a break, really pace myself, because, I'm going through this chemo and it's slowing down sort of my thought processes from time to time. So, it is a weird time in my life, and there's a lot of medication and a lot of chemo going through my body, so that does have an effect on my brain as well. I've had to learn to be okay with just, spending maybe 15 minutes at a time on something, or sometimes even, every day, just 15 minutes a day, where I take a break after reading or watching something or listening to something, and I'll just stop. If I do feel like picking up back again later, then I do, but otherwise I'm okay. I'll just do it again tomorrow. I just have to pace myself again and just give myself the time and the space to get through it eventually. And yes, speaking of which, I also want to talk about what's happening in the future, in terms of the brain stuff. I do have a couple couple of lumbar punctures coming up a few weeks after my last cycle. So again, they're going to do the lumbar puncture for my spine, for them to get some spinal fluid again to check, to see, just to do a kind of like a biopsy and see if there's anything there, just to make sure there's no lymphoma cells up in my nervous system, and also to do the methotrexate chemo, just to protect me again as a prophylaxis and make sure that, I don't get any sort of like lymphoma into my nervous system, up my brain or my spine. So I am excited about that. I am definitely excited about getting through all of this and getting back to normal, finishing my treatment, get back into my pre-lymphoma routine, before this whole new normal happened to me, and get back to work, catch up with my coworkers and all that. So, but for the meantime, I'm just going to relax and take it easy, and I just want to, pace myself and really not pressure myself to do any more than I physically or mentally can. I'm happy with that. And yeah, I'm just gonna stay here at home and keep doing my treatments and see my doctors when I have to and all of that, and just enjoy the ride. As far as rides go, going through cancer isn't exactly a fun ride, but it is a ride nonetheless. Yeah, so that's, just the latest with me. That's what's been going on with me. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate that you guys are on my channel and watching my videos. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do get updates when I do post new videos. I've got more content down the line, because I do intend to keep posting stuff even after I've done my treatment. I want to continue sharing my thoughts and sharing my experiences with you post chemo, and post some more like information and give you a lot of resources. Hey everyone, this is Marco, and I just wanted to give you a quick update about what's been going on with me. And I actually just started my last cycle, which is cycle number 6. Just started that today, and I started off the treatment at the hospital earlier today, but now I'm back home, and it'll take me about 5 days for the actual treatment, and then a couple of weeks of recovery after that. So before I actually got into the cycle, I just wanted to give you guys just a brief update about what's been happening with me so far, and just some reflections that I wanted to share now that I'm wrapping up my whole chemotherapy, the whole process, basically thinking about the kind of journey I've had so far. So I just wanted to also give you a little update about that. So I guess first things off, what's been going on with me right now, probably I want to touch on the steroids again, because I think that's really something that I kind of watch out for at the beginning of each cycle, is how I'd react to the steroids, because it does have a bit of a significant effect on me, on my body, and on my mind as well. I don't know if it's just me over anticipating, or it's sort of like a placebo effect, but I start up the steroids when the cycle starts. I do feel a bit of that rush again. It's pretty much the same, I think, in the sense that kind of get restless. The upside is I do feel a bit more creative, and thoughts come to me easily. I just feel like there's a lot of gas in the tank, so to speak. So I've learned how to pace myself and kind of keep my foot off the gas, because I feel I already have that boost. It's a bit of an artificial boost, but I sort of go pedal to the metal, if you know what I mean. That's one of the things that I just watch out for. And with every cycle, more of actually in the second half of the whole treatment process, I do watch out for 3 things that I have to do, which is to keep my feet up when I'm sitting down, when I'm at the computer. I actually have my feet up right now. I have a little stool here under my desk, so I can keep my feet elevated, because I'm getting a lot of fluid retention, towards the end of each cycle. I tend to get a lot of fluid retention, so I do keep off of salty foods, I guess. But more importantly, I also do keep my feet up even when I'm in bed. If I'm reading a book or praying or something, I do have to keep my feet elevated. And I also have to hydrate a lot, because it's really super important when you're going through chemo to always keep up your fluid intake, because there's a lot going through me, not just the chemo, but the daily meds that I take to maintain my condition, to make sure that I don't get sick and all that. And the other big thing is that try to sleep as early as I can. Well, more of a sleep at a reasonable hour. Probably my cutoff is 10:30 to 11 at night. I don't want to, sleep past midnight. The challenge is that I do get a lot of restless nights from time to time when I'm on the steroids. So, but as much as I can, I just want to like get to bed early just to, because the more sleep I have, of course, I think it's easier for me to recover from the cycle. I think with the way things are going right now, because I'm getting at towards the end of my treatment, there is still a mixture for me. There's a mixture of dread and excitement. Dread, of course, I think it's natural for anyone going through this process where you do feel a sense of dread because like there's still the unknown. Like when I started this treatment at the beginning, I did have like a huge amount of dread, naturally, as one does when they go through this sort of thing. But when I started learning about my condition and what kind of treatment I had, that shed more light on sort of like the roadmap I had ahead of me. So now I'm sort of like going through the same thing again. I did get used to this new normal, this whole like routine, but now that I'm reaching the end, there's another, like, the path before me is still a bit blurry or needs a little more light, shedding more light on it, I think is what I need. So that will like come in its own good time, I think. But yeah, I'm getting a bit of dread and excitement, meaning that I'm looking forward to getting back to normal and trying to get into my old schedule, maybe an improved version of my old schedule, before pre-lymphoma, basically before this whole lymphoma thing happened to me. In spite of everything, I think I'm excited about what's up ahead for me. So I try to like balance my excitement and dread, and more of excitement than dread, to take off the edge, the fear that I do feel from time to time. But all things considered, I'd say I'm okay as a whole. And I really say that with a deep sense of gratitude because, I mean, all things considered, I'm doing fine because even if cancer is never a great thing to have, I do still have a lot to be thankful for. If there's anything I've learned on this journey, it's really to cultivate a greater sense of gratitude, I'd say, because there's really like a lot of good things I still have going for me. And I really think that gratitude is kind of like a buffer that makes the bad days like easier for me to get through, because I have that gratitude to things that I'm grateful for. I think about the things that I'm grateful for, that I fall back on those when I'm feeling kind of raw or running on fumes sometimes, because this whole chemo thing does take a lot out of me. And if any of you have are going through it or have gone through it, you know what I'm talking about. Like, scientifically speaking, there is really a huge benefit in exercising gratitude, because it literally like rewires the brain. If you don't know that, there are like books about that, one of which is The Science of Positivity. It's not like toxic or like blind positivity, but more of like a grounded sense of positivity rooted in gratitude. I've talked about this in one of my earlier videos, and you can find the link in that. I'll put it up in the description below this video. But 5 things that helped me get through my diagnosis. But I'm just gonna touch on that again now really quick. Basically, cultivating gratitude does rewire your brain a lot, and that makes you more resilient actually in the face of like negative or maybe daunting circumstances in your life. I think I'm living proof that does work. It worked for me. It continues to work for me to this day. And I'm not saying, not to say that having negative thoughts is a bad thing in itself, because that's totally normal and it's inevitable. The thing is that if you dwell too much on the negatives or the what ifs, you get consumed by those thoughts. That is something else though. And if you're like so caught up in those thoughts and it's like getting in the way of you functioning or living a normal life, then that is something though that can be a problem. So really, gratitude is gives you a lot of leverage mentally and emotionally, I think. So that's something that's helped me. I mean, if I'm gonna talk about the things that I am personally grateful for, first one would be my wife, because she has been like incredibly supportive of my healing journey, and she's always been there for me since day one. She's really like stepped up and done a lot of the heavy lifting around the house when it comes to the practical everyday things, and also taking care of the kids and my kids as well is another thing that I'm grateful for, because they've been incredibly supportive of me as well. And they're always checking in with me and asking me how I'm doing. So their concern, really takes the edge off for me as well. And the other thing I'm grateful for is my family, back in the Philippines because, I'm always on my phone and, I'm talking to them. We have like a family chat, group chat going on as well. They're reaching out to me and making sure I'm okay as well. That also helps me. And the other thing that I'm grateful for is the healthcare that I've been getting, which has been nothing short of amazing. To be honest, I really feel blessed with the kind of medical care that I've been getting here. One thing that I've really noticed about the healthcare here is that there's a lot of humanity and kindness in the care that I've had here. Like the healthcare system, I guess in some other parts of the world maybe might make you feel like you're a faceless number in the system, in the machinery that just needs to be processed, but that's quite the opposite here, I'd say. I have to just share that. I mean, all the nurses and the doctors have made me feel like a person and not just, another patient they have to deal with, but, they've dealt with me, as a person. They treated me with kindness and all that. On top of that, I do have a couple of people, Matt and Sharon. I check in with both these wonderful people like weekly or fortnightly to keep my mental health on track. So that again is something that I'm super and eternally grateful for because it really has made a huge impact on me in a positive way. And they've helped me process my feelings and thoughts that have come up as I've gone through this treatment. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like there are times really that, going through cancer treatment means that you are going to think about thoughts about death and dying. And, you have to confront your mortality. And I do want to do another video, a separate video about that, about confronting thoughts about mortality. But yeah, I'm just saying now that that's really something that you go through, with someone with cancer. You're inevitably you have to confront your mortality and just try to get your head around that. But it does come to a point where you do accept that life, can be funny sometimes, and that's just how it is. But just go through it every day. Just get through it one day at a time, because there is no other way to do it other than one day at a time. I would love to go through it like a week at a time if I could, but that's just how it is. So yeah, I mean, gratitude, I feel, is like a bridge to acceptance, I think. And especially going through this sort of process can make your optimism levels really fluctuate wildly from time to time. Like one day you're feeling great, other days you feel like, just absolute garbage, to be bluntly honest. That's just part of the process. So it really does make a difference when you have people in your corner, they're rooting for you, and people who can give you like a sense of perspective, and they keep you grounded through the whole thing, which is, what's luckily in my case, that's what's happened to me. So to wrap things up, that's the latest with me. And I just want to finish off by saying that I do have a couple of lumbar punctures coming up after this cycle, and another CT scan, which is also going to happen probably a month after I finish this cycle 6, which I've just started today. And they're just going to see where I'm at with that and how I've responded to the treatment. So, that's just the latest with me. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to good results as always. And as always, please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so that you can get more content information about lymphoma. And if you do have any thoughts or comments you'd like to share, please just drop it in the comments below this video, because if you've gone through this sort of thing, or someone that is going through this kind of experience, feel free to share your thoughts about that in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. That's all I have for now, but I'll post another update after cycle 6 and let you know how I'm doing so far. All right, so thanks for your time, guys, for listening and watching, and I'll talk to you soon in the next video. Hey guys, it's Marco, and I'm back here with just another update about my 6th and final cycle. So I'm done with all of my cycles of main treatment. So in today's video, I just wanted to briefly talk about how I'm doing, now that this last cycle is done, and some good news that I want to share with you, which I'm pretty happy about, and some reflections I've had now that I'm done with all of this whole treatment, and then also what's coming up for me, what I'm looking forward to in the near future. So before we get into it, if you could like this video and also subscribe to my channel, and if you could also hit that notification bell so that you know when my latest video comes out. All right, so I do appreciate that. Now, as far as like all of my cycles combined, I think it's as a whole it's been okay. You know, a lot of ups and downs, but I was able to do it with the help of the people around me. As far as this last cycle goes, I can say that this is probably the roughest post-cycle recovery I've had as of yet. So this one was kind of like the hardest to get over, to be honest, but you know, I'm okay now. I'm back home. But what happened was I was actually admitted to the hospital for almost a week after I finished this last cycle. The couple of things that happened to me were, first of all, the anemia, which is when you get low hemoglobin levels, and then the neutropenic fever is when your neutrophils crash, basically. They go down and then you get a fever as a result. So I'm gonna add a link in the description below this video if you want to know more about what a neutropenic fever is and what are neutrophils in the first place. But basically, neutrophils are important, especially, you know, for someone going through chemotherapy. They're a marker of your immunity. So my hematologist, my doctor, Wendy, she keeps a close eye on my neutrophil levels, and that would tell her whether I'm doing well or not, how I'm responding to the treatment. But basically, what happened was that after cycle 6, my hemoglobin levels went down, so I needed another blood transfusion, which I've done in the past. In the past few cycles, you know, my hemoglobin would go down, and I'd need a couple of packs or units of blood is what they call it. And after that was done, I got a fever shortly after, so I had to stay in the hospital longer. Actually, I had like a 2-day break in between the anemia and the fever, so I was in the hospital for a few days for the anemia, and then went home a couple of days, and then went back in when I got a fever. And it was kind of a stubborn fever, like my neutrophils were 0, which is not a good thing, and so they kept me in the hospital and gave me some antibiotics just to keep me steady throughout the whole thing, and keep me to keep my immunity up, basically. So I had to stay for a few more days to get over the fever. It was kind of like a bit persistent because I was like 38 degrees Celsius for a few days, but now I'm okay. I've gone home already, as you can see, and now I'm back home. So yeah, basically the other thing I wanted to talk about was, you know, wrapping up, you know, all of my cycles. So I'm done with like the main treatment. So first of all, it does feel like I'm over the hardest part. I've got that out of the way now. So the pressure is a little bit off now, and that is a relief to me, of course. And also the good news is that I wanted to share with you is that my hair started to grow back, as you can see here. My eyebrows have started to come back in, and I've got a mustache going on here, and my sideburns are coming in as well. So that's a good thing, because during the last half of my cycle, my eyebrows literally like fall off in my sleep, and I'd wake up and half of it was gone. So they are coming back in nicely, and I'm happy about that. So going back to, like, you know, looking at the whole treatment cycle, you know, how it started versus how it's going, like I've talked about before, like at first, you know, it was very terrifying for me, and a lot of times I was flying in the dark, and you know, it felt like I was just in a lot of uncharted territory. There's a lot of uncertainty walking into this new sort of like chapter in my life. And gradually, though, it did get better for me. As you can see, I've gone through all 6 cycles, and I eventually got used to the new normal, even if the new normal would change every cycle. But I just held on, and with the help of my faith in God and in the people around me, the people who took care of me, they gave me the strength to keep going on and just to get through all the treatment cycles. So now that I'm done with all of that, I'm excited for what's in store for me in the future. So saying that, you know, I also have to say that there are a lot of things I'm grateful for. Like, first of all, my wife, who took care of me during this whole ordeal, and my kids, who were with me the whole time and they supported me. So that really took the edge off for me as well. And of course, the doctors and the nurses and the other people from the healthcare system who helped me through this very scary time in my life. So all of them really collectively they're very professional, and they did their jobs well. So I'm very grateful for that. And because of that, you know, I'm still here and I'm doing well. And like I said, I went into the cycle 6 in my last video, the pre-cycle 6 video. I did mention that this whole experience taught me to cultivate a greater sense of gratitude, and counting your blessings is something that I really stood by the whole time. And I know that it sounds cliche, but there is a good reason why it's such a well-known expression and why people use it all the time, because, you know, during my worst days, gratitude was what really kept me going. Even when I felt like there was nothing in the tank, I just felt like I was just down on my feet, and I felt really terrible at times. So really, that sense of gratitude is what kept me going. And you know, I think even for anyone going through any sort of like tough time in their life, cancer or not, gratitude is really like what stands in the way of, you know, falling off the edge and holding on, I think. So yeah, I mean, that's really something that I've learned to cultivate over the past few months, and I will continue to cultivate going into the future. So speaking of which, you know, I am also excited for what's up ahead. Now, I do have a couple of smaller treatments coming up soon, which is it's for another type of drug, not the ones that I've already had. This is like something else called methotrexate. So it's only a shorter one, which isn't as intense as my main treatment, and it's only to make sure that my brain and my nervous system is safe. So I'm going to be talking about that in another video, so watch out for that soon. So remember to hit that notification bell so that you get a heads up when you know, any new video I have comes out. All right, so other things that I'm looking forward to is, of course, you know, it's the holidays now, so I am looking forward to spending Christmas with my wife and my kids. And you know, it's just a gift for, you know, like just hanging out with them is a gift in itself, is what I mean. And I'm saying that because at one point during this whole process, it's actually during the beginning, I was worried that I wouldn't make it to Christmas. Like I said, you know, in the beginning, I was really scared and I was really flooded with a lot of what if thoughts. So looking back to that time and to this time now, I am happy that I'm still around and that I can enjoy the holidays and enjoy life with my family. So, I mean, I'm just looking forward to 2022. You know, no matter what your situation in life is, I think that we can all agree that the last couple of years have been very chaotic. So I'm really hoping that things will calm down for us, for you watching this video, my friends, my family, and just everyone around the world, because it's been rough for all of us, I think, in varying degrees. And I'm just looking forward to things just getting a little bit less crazy. And personally, I am looking forward to seeing my kids grow up and just watch them, you know, chase after their dreams, because I do have like two very gifted and brilliant boys, and I'm really grateful for them. So it does make me proud as a dad just to see them, you know, do their thing and lean into their strengths, because they're quite talented. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to do this coming year. And I'm also looking forward to growing this channel with my wife, who's been working behind the scenes to get this, you know, my lymphoma channel up and running. So I really am looking forward to, yeah, seeing where this channel goes in the future. And I'm looking forward to really just creating more content for you guys. And I hope that it does serve as a source of inspiration and information and hope for you. And I hope that you keep watching. So I really am grateful that you've taken the time today to just, you know, watch my videos and listen to my story and be part of my journey. So if you do have any thoughts or anything that you'd like to share, please post them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet to get more videos from me. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, that's basically everything that's been going on with me so far. But I'm going to be busy like recording more videos and content for you in the future. So I'll talk to you soon. And thank you for watching.
Hey, it's Marco, and this is my lymphoma channel, and I'm really excited to share some fantastic news today. So it's been a few weeks since I finished all of my chemotherapy, and that means enough time has passed for me to do another PET CT scan. And just to remind you what that is, you have this type of scan to see the progression of tumors in the body. In my case, I had B-cell double-hit lymphoma, which is an aggressive type of lymphoma. I did have a scan halfway through my treatment, and my doctor was very happy with my progress at the time. She told me that the tumors had shrunk a lot. The measurements of one of the tumors were about 45 by 35 millimeters, and it went down to about 19 by 15 millimeters after the third cycle. That was definitely good news, and it was a relief, but I knew that I wasn't out of the woods just yet.
I still had 3 cycles left and then had to do one more scan after that. So the whole process was grueling, not just physically, but also emotionally. It was a lot of waiting, a lot of praying, and a lot of anticipating. And it was hoping for the best while fearing the worst. So it was really a roller coaster ride, and at some point, I told myself to hold on and just go along with it. And now that I'm done with all my treatment, I had to do one more scan. Naturally, I was really anxious about the whole thing. Even though I've done it a couple of times before, this one is more important. So I did this last scan, and I drove straight home. I got back at about 1 p.m. and tried to get on with the rest of my day. I didn't want to think too much about the results and try to keep myself busy. I figured it would be at least a week before I'd hear back from my doctor. So I pushed it to the back of my mind. And that's why I wasn't expecting what happened next. That same day, I got a call. It was about 5 p.m. and I was in the middle of writing another script for a video. So I answered the call without even thinking about it. And when I heard my doctor's voice, my heart started pounding. I knew she was probably calling about my scan results. And sure enough, she got right into it. She said, "Oh, hello Marco. Your results came in and I wanted to talk to you about that." There was a brief pause after that, which felt like an eternity. The results are really good. I don't think there are any words to fully describe what it felt like hearing that, but I will say that a huge sense of relief washed over me. In my excitement, I kind of missed some of the other stuff she told me after hearing the good news. But she did mention something called complete metabolic response, and that simply means there are no traces of detectable cancer. And more importantly, it means that the tumors are gone and that there's no evidence of disease. In other words, this is the best result that my doctor is hoping for. So, that means I'm officially in remission. And right after ending the call, I told my wife the good news, and we had a moment together to appreciate what had just happened. And of course, we cried tears of joy and relief. I mean, I was basically holding my breath during the last 6 months, but now I can finally exhale and relax. And of course, my wife was just as relieved as I was. Honestly, I'm still processing everything that happened so far. But I just have to say how grateful I am that things have turned out this way, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to everyone who helped me get better. First of all, my wife, who stood by me and continues to stand by me. She made sure that the kids were okay while taking care of me, and she made sure that their day-to-day routine still kept going in spite of everything going on. And that's really crucial for kids, to have a sense of structure when something like this happens. Also, I'm really grateful for my doctors, the nurses, the medical staff, my psychologist, and the folks from Leukemia and Blood Cancer New Zealand. The healthcare system quite literally saved my life, and that's all I have to say about that. Then I'd also like to say thanks to my friends from the local community, as well as the priests and other members of my parish. All of them offered spiritual and practical support, which I'm eternally grateful for. There's really something about people showing up at your doorstep during a time of need, and also knowing that they're praying for you. So it's humbling and heartwarming at the same time. And I'd also like to thank God, because I believe that there is a higher power involved in all of this. I know not everyone sees it that way, and that's fine. But I do know that praying has helped me get through one of the most terrifying times in my life. And now I can look forward to the future without being scared. So looking ahead, I'll still put up new videos and share more content and my thoughts in the future. Even though I'm better now, that's not the end for my lymphoma channel. I mean, the whole reason why I started this channel was to offer hope and inspiration. And I hope that this video
has given you that today. Anyway, I just wanted to share the good news with you, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.